Welcome to the BLTnT podcast. I'm your host, Matt Loria, serving up real stories of business, life, technology, and transformations. You'll hear from interesting people about big changes from career shifts to life-altering decisions and the innovations that help make it all happen. It's about sharing those light bulb moments, pivot points, challenges overcome, and the journeys that inspire us to think differently. If you're on the lookout for insights to propel you forward, stories that resonate, or just a bit of inspiration on your next BLTnT move, you're in the right place. Let's dig in. All right, welcome to our newest episode of the BLTnT podcast, where we're talking about business, life, technology, and transformations. And we've got with us here Sam Munaco, who is the first guest to be privy to sit underneath the sign. So thanks for allowing it to shine down upon you.
What kind of sign? Oh, the sign back here.
Yeah, this is my surprise gift from Jackie. She got this and made this all happen last week.
Very cool.
Yeah. So.
Cool.
I make an introduction here of Sam. He's a couple of things. Well, first of all, Sam was Sam. I consider like Kid Rock is the rock and roll son of Detroit. I think Sam is the real estate mogul son of Detroit here, and he's the son of an entrepreneur. He's a hardworking guy. He's got the 3 Fs. He's a family man. He's faithful, and he's fucking funny. And he was worried about saying the F word, so I told him that I was going to drop an F-bomb real early just to make sure that he didn't feel bad if he ended up dropping one.
You did. You know, the 3 Fs in my world are food, family, and football.
Okay. Thank you.
So thank you for the kind words. You're making me a little bit nervous here, but glad to be here and very interested and intrigued to be part of this podcast.
Good. Well, it's been a pleasure getting to know you over the last, what's it been, about 4 or 5 years, getting to know each other, and realized we've kind of known of each other from prior to that, but it's been great.
Our paths do cross. Obviously, your business model is similar to ours. We're real estate consultants. We do a lot of hunting, as do you. We don't do what you do, but you can certainly make introductions to us and vice versa.
Absolutely. We kind of met under some interesting circumstances too, when introduced by some common friends, and those friends brought us to a golf course, and we were having a dinner, and they were all gone, and it's just me and Sam sitting there, and Sam says, "So what do you do?" And I tell him, and he says, "Well, who are some of your customers?" And I said, "Well, you wouldn't really know of them. Most of them are, it's not like we're serving Target and Amazon or anything like that. We're serving the mid-market, which not everybody knows the names of those clients." He said, "Come on, try me."
Well, that's our market too.
But I didn't realize this at the time. So
Right.
he says, "Try me." And I said a name. And I said, "We do some work with Save-On, the guys who make the coupons." And his face kind of lights up for a second, and he says, "I just bought his old house." And I said, "Oh no, you're the guy." And then you said, "You're the guy." And what had happened was that when Mike sold his house, before Mike sold his house, we took care of putting some Wi-Fi in there, which we don't do residential work, but we did just for him. And he says to me, "Hey, the new guy wants your phone number." And I said, "No, do not give it to him. We don't do that kind of work. That was only a favor for you." And then, after that, what was it? Within 24 hours, I was over your house working on your Wi-Fi. So.
It all changed. So I appreciate you doing that. I know you typically don't do residential, and one of the biggest concerns at the house with my kids, and I have 4 of them, is Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
So. Yeah, and I tell my kids all the time, it's be careful what you say and what you do, because you never really know what the outcome can be long term. So and that's I thank you for bringing that to my attention. That's how our relationship started, and I think it's carried forward that was 3 years ago.
Yeah,
you're right.
Yeah, and our wives enjoy each other's company, so that makes it easier to hang out, so it's all good.
And just so you know, the Wi-Fi is still fucked up, but we can talk about that after.
Well, we're going to have to upgrade you to one of those Juniper Wi-Fi systems since this episode is sponsored by Juniper.
Oh, boy.
And so that's not what you have. So we'll have to do that, and then you won't have those same sentiments.
So I know you're the one asking the questions, and I appreciate that. But I do have a question for you: is why me? What value? What intrigues you about my career, my path that is of interest to you?
Well, you're a layered man, and every time that I get together with you, I learn about another layer, and it's always interesting. And the whole premise of this show started when we, when kind of recognized that I get to talk to some interesting people and share some interesting stories, but those stories usually were just kind of stopping when I would get home and tell my wife, or maybe make an introduction or two to the person I'd meet. But this is something to get to know. Got the phone call ringing here. Kind of shut that down. This is a way that I get to share some of those interesting stories. So when somebody has layers like you have, I get really interested to get you talking and get other people to learn a little bit more about who you are. And so, you're the son of an entrepreneur. I'm the son of an entrepreneur. We both kind of learned our crafts or our own just personalities developed interestingly through through growing up in that way. We're both Italian. Actually, you're Sicilian on both sides. I'm Italian and Sicilian, so I'm only half crazy. You're fully crazy.
100% crazy.
So, those are some of the reasons. But you've got an interesting pulse on, obviously, on your industry, the industry of commercial real estate, and especially the Detroit market. And obviously, that's an interesting market. It's an interesting place, right? We're getting to see within many people's lifetimes. People a little bit older than us got to see the full ride of, Detroit at its glory to Detroit at its demise to the resurgence. And so you've gotten to see a lot of miles of rough terrain through COVID with the real estate world. So, I want to share some of these stories and then and dig a little deeper and get people to know you. So that's why you're here.
No, I appreciate it. So where do you want to start? I've been doing this for almost 35 years now.
Okay.
And you mentioned son of an entrepreneur. So my father was a grocer, and he and his brother, Sam, owned liquor stores in the city. One was at on the corner of Mount Elliott and Charlevoix. The other was Mack and Bewick, which were pretty rough neighborhoods. And, we all worked at the store as kids. I worked there even through my college days, occasionally when I was in law school. And I tell people that I learned more working at my dad's store than I did in 4 years of college and 3 years of law school. And I just learned how to deal with people who were different, never talk down to anybody. So I'm comfortable talking with bankers and lawyers because of my education, as well as talking to people, who are homeless on the streets. And you never demean, you never talk down to anybody, and it's a skill set that I learned from my dad that I really do appreciate.
That's great. Yeah, I've got a lot of stories about growing up working in a boat hardware store, and learning how to behave with others, right? And so same kind of thing. The biggest customer could be coming in grubby shorts because he's painting something on his boat that week, or
right.
Maybe he's hungover or something. I don't know. But you never know who you're talking to. Treat everybody with respect, and there's always something interesting to learn when you're young and you get exposed to business. And I remember one of the things that I learned was we used to always have to sweep the parking lot. So we had a sidewalk in front of the door, but the parking lot was a gravel sidewalk. So I'd have to be out on the road sweeping the rocks back into the parking lot to make sure the parking lot looks good. And I was out there one morning with I was probably 13 years old, and I'm out there with an 18-year-old. I remember the kid was graduating high school that year, and
And how old were you?
I think I was about 13.
Got it.
And I'm watching this older guy, right, who's 18. He's grabbing the grocery carts basically and bringing them back into the store, and a customer pulls up, so somebody probably in their 40s, and this 18-year-old says to him, "How's it going?" And here I am, 13, going, "How's it going? He can talk to a grown-up like that, huh?" And so then then when the customer would come in, I'd say, "How's it going? How you doing today?" Instead of saying, "Hi," or whatever a 13-year-old might say, more sheepishly, I was going in there and just having the conversation. And, the things that you learn, it's almost like, you learn on the street, right? Different than anything you learned in school. School didn't teach me to walk up to an adult and say, "How you doing today? What can I help you with?" I learned that from watching somebody older than me. And to me, that 18-year-old at the time was the guy I was looking up to the most.
I learned a lot from my parents. Both my mom and dad are of Sicilian descent. All four of my grandparents came from pretty much the same town in Sicily. And, my legal name is Salvatore.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody called me Salvatore other than my mom. My name was Sam because they wanted us to be American.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted us to fit in. So, unfortunately, I never learned to speak Italian. My parents were too lazy to go in the other room and talk about us, so they would just speak Sicilian in front of us. So we learned all the swear words and what have you. But, I had and still have a very blessed and unique upbringing. I'm the fifth son. My oldest brother is only 5.5 years older than me, so my mom knocked him out pretty quick. I do have a younger sister. We're all here. My parents are both gone now, but and we get along.
Great.
We, I'm thinking in terms of, the work ethic that I learned from my father and, never to talk down to anybody. But I probably learned more from my mom than my father. My mom and dad were both pretty tough, demanding parents. My mom, if there's a couple things that jump out to me, it would be things like, and it's worked for us. If you got an issue with someone, if there's a problem, don't let it fester. Call them out, have a sit down, talk about it, address the issue, kiss and make up, and on you go. And I got to tell you, it's worked for us, not only in family environment, the family environment, but as in business too.
Mm-hmm.
We do a lot of hunting. Our company is growing, so if someone does something, I just call them out, and not everybody can do that, because some folks just don't like confrontation.
Yeah, I think most don't like confrontation.
Most don't. I don't mind it because I've been trained to deal with it and move on. The other thing that just jumps out to me that I learned from my mother is always acknowledge presence. Make sure you say hello and goodbye to people, but even more so, and as you are, I'm in a very competitive business, and we have a number of events where my competition is there, and you try to get along with everyone. Some of them are a little envious because you took something from them that they had, and it's exhausting to see someone who you don't particularly care for and avoid them. So I just go right up to them. I say hello to them.
Mm-hmm.
I get it out of the way, and on you go. And some of them are just freaked out by it.
Yeah. And is it a genuine friendliness, though, from your perspective, do you think?
No.
Okay.
That's a good
Or is
question.
it the right thing to do?
It's absolutely the right thing to do. You show respect for people.
So even though you might not find the friendship inside of you or that feeling, there's a mutual respect. That's what's allowing, or at least you're respecting them in order to do that. Is that the point?
Maybe. I'm also respecting my mother, and when she said you always acknowledge presence. So I just do it. And the other things that I learned from both my parents, because we came from humble beginnings, is always be humble and always give other people credit. So if we win a deal or if there's an acknowledgement to be made, and I try to teach this to my kids too. Be humble, give other people credit, and those are good philosophies and principles to live by. They work for us. They work for me. My siblings are some of the most incredible people. My eldest brother is a physician, now retired. Brother number 2 is in the real estate business, not what I do. He's more residential. Brother number 3 owns a wood floor business. Brother number 4 was in the check cashing business. And my sister is married to a gentleman that owns a restaurant on the Detroit River called Sinbad's. And we just all get along. My father, when we were kids, he would grab the five of us, the 5 boys, and say, I don't worry about you kids, you brothers getting along when you get older. But when you get married, it's going to be a challenge because women could, who has more than the other, and it could get contentious, and it really never has.
That's great.
We really, when people, now that my mom and dad are both gone, some people would ask me things like, did you fight over money? Most families fight over money when it's, we didn't have a tremendous amount of money, but there was a little bit of money. I said, yeah, we fought. Oh, that's unfortunate. I said, no, you don't get it. A couple of us had borrowed money, and we decided to start out with a clean slate. And one sibling in particular didn't want to hear it. He said, I should pay it back. And we said, no, we're starting with the clean slate. So we didn't really fight over money, but that just shows you the kind of siblings and it's a very unique situation that we have. And I don't know too many people who have something like that.
No, you don't. You don't normally hear the fight of I want to give money back. Excuse me.
The other thing is as I said, we've been so blessed. We haven't had any divorce in our family, which is 6 of us.
So
now
statistically, you're
now
beating the odds.
Now 2 of them we killed, and one we threw in the trunk for a few hours.
Yeah,
but no divorce.
Good.
So
good.
I'm joking.
Nice.
Some people would take exception to that. So I like to joke around a lot. It's part of my demeanor. It's part of my sales technique, and it doesn't work for everybody. But
I think it works for most, though.
I don't know about that.
You read the room pretty well.
Excuse me.
No problem. So let's talk about kind of your career a little bit and how you got where you're at right now and what you're doing, and then let's dovetail that into talking about Detroit a little bit.
So I mentioned my dad was a grocer and we had a store. And I worked there for several years, and I didn't like it. I didn't like being at the same place at the same time and doing the same thing every day. And my father would look at me and say, be careful what you wish for, because all you got to do is show up and they bring the money to you. And my reaction was, Dad, this isn't for me. I'd rather go out and find the money. And because I got to have every day has to be different. Otherwise, I'm just going to stagnate. So, I grew up in Grosse Pointe. I went to Michigan State, got my undergrad. I went to law school. I practiced law for a few years. I really wasn't crazy about doing the same thing every day and being in an office. And I got recruited by one of my law school classmates and said, you were born to sell. You need to be selling something. So I went and worked for a company at the time called Byron Traris, commercial real estate consultants. And then 18 months later, I joined a company called Signature Associates. I spent 20 years there. And then, boy, it's 14 years now. I got recruited by a firm out of Chicago called Advocate Advisors. And they immediately made me company president. I opened up the Southfield office. At the time, I think we were maybe 4 or 5 of us. And we're now up to 50. It's been a slow, steady growth, but we are growing. We are hiring. And business is good. COVID was so what our company does is we represent Fortune 500 companies. We do their real estate consulting for them. We are only on the user side of the equation. So in our industry, we're called tenant rep brokers. So if you're a tenant or if you own a building, we can help you. If you want to lease a building, it's something we don't touch. So we don't represent landlords. We take the conflict of interest very seriously in our industry, in our business. So we're conflict free. So when you hire us and we go out to market, I'm going to digress a little bit. I always wanted to be a sports agent.
Okay.
And this is about as close as I could ever get. So when I get hired by a Wallbridge or a Clark Hill or some of our other clients, and we go out to market, every landlord in town wants them as a tenant. And many of our clients often stay right where they're at. So it's a fine line of making sure that you communicate with each of these landlords, because at the end of the day, there's going to be one winner and 2 or 3 losers. And these are, landlords that I got to deal with over and over and over again. So communicating is important so that they know what they're up against, but it's fun. I really enjoy what I do. I'm 65 years old. Retirement is not imminent. We got a number of young, very talented people that we've hired and continue to hire. And I like mentoring them and watching them grow. And we're having a blast doing it.
That's great. Touching on something that you and I talked about multiple times, but I think it dovetails right back into what you were talking about, was the communication with those landlords along the way, right? One, that you're going into a situation that statistically the client, your client, is more likely to stay than they are to move in many of these situations. And 2, there's going to be winners and losers. And 3, you're going to be bumping into these people on a regular basis. So you had talked to me about communication and how communication is such an important part of your business, and that ghosting is not in your vocabulary. Can you expound upon that a little bit? Maybe tell a story or two about that?
Well, it just blows me away that how some folks can ignore a text message, an email, a phone call. It's just so easy to communicate nowadays that there really is no excuse for it. So I'm a communicator, and it's a fine line where, if a prospective landlord is asking, what's it going to take to get in my building? What do I need to do? You're leveraging one deal against another, but you got to be very careful that you're not breaching any confidences or confidential information that, so it's a real delicate balance. But at the end of the day, you just want to try to treat people the same way that you would like to be treated. And I just really get upset when, if I'm looking to buy a car or whatever, and you just don't hear back from someone. We have a rule in our office that if you don't respond back or communicate within 24 hours, that's just not, we don't allow that to happen.
Not acceptable.
No, and yeah, ghosting is just something that just really, I could feel the hair on the back of my neck stick up when you mentioned the word, and it's prevalent out there, and it's easy to do, but it's just not acceptable.
we just I was just at a game for one of my sons last night, soccer game, talking to one of the dads who's a CFO looking for his next gig, and he was telling me that he was on his 5th interview with an organization, and then they ghosted him.
Oh, wow.
Didn't hear from him for 3 or 4 weeks. Still has never heard from him, but somehow got some word back through from the recruiter that they've changed their mind. But the lack of decorum there, of no communication back, and I just don't understand it. The hard conversations are what makes you honorable.
They probably did him a favor by not hiring him.
They showed what kind of organization they were.
The culture.
Yep.
It starts from the top down. So, yeah, again, it's a different world now, and it's so easy to communicate with people on different levels, and I just don't get it.
I liken it to some of it is kind of generational, right? I look at it and I think when you look at so somebody my age, when text messaging came out, right, and the internet was budding, it was called instant messenger. So I think in my mind I always think instant, right? So if somebody texts me, I try to text them back as quickly as possible. Now sometimes I get a bunch, I forget, or I'm in a meeting, right? We're human. But generally speaking, I try to be as instant as possible as I can in those types of situations. Whereas I think that if you grew up with text messaging kind of as your primary original forms of communication, I think it's, and you watch it, right? You see people look at a text and kind of set it down, right? And believe me, it's a delicate balance because you're trying to be intentional and present with the person that you're with, but you also have to make sure that your follow-up is there. I had a person tell me, we were introduced by our insurance person a long time ago by our friend Paul Glantz from Imagine Theaters. And Paul said, this is the guy you have to work with. So his name's Brian Pilarski. So he was.
I know Brian.
You know Brian?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, Brian said that he prides himself. He says, look, I can't differentiate myself in a whole lot of ways except from my accessibility and my response. And so he said, what you have my word on is that when you try to communicate with me, I will respond.
Yeah, and you're right. Brian is a very good communicator.
He is. But it takes, look what it takes to do it, right? It takes a focus of that. I mean, it's intentional.
I was kind of smirking a little bit when it is a generational thing, how you communicate. I have 4 children, 2 girls and then 2 boys. One of my daughters was asked to go to prom or what have you via text message.
Oh.
And she said, how do I respond to this? I said, well, do you want to go with them? She said, maybe. I said, then let me respond. So I grabbed her phone and we were fighting. I said, I just, he's asking you to go to so I tried to explain to her that social skills that are so crucial and how to deal and communicate with people are being lost. And, it's just mine, text messaging is an incredibly effective way to communicate, especially late at night, where you don't want to have a phone conversation with someone. Email's great. But there's just certain things that that you just don't do. And that may be not a great example. I don't know. I just, my kids look at me and shake their head and say, you're an old man, Dad. You don't get it, Dad. You don't get it.
Right.
And maybe they're right. Maybe I don't get it.
I do think there's some tried and true laws of nature, though, right? And communication is one of them. There's a George Bernard Shaw quote that says, and I have the poster, it says, the illusion of communication is that it actually occurred, right? And so that can go
that's a good point.
They can go a number of different ways, right? One way can be is that I thought I said your shirt was nice, right? And you may have heard that you could have heard that as sarcasm. You could have heard that you could have misinterpreted what I said. You could have thought I said your hair has lice.
I'm seeing a lot
Yeah,
of a lot of feuds over a text message that can be misinterpreted.
You bet.
Just pick up the phone and call them.
Yeah.
I've sent out some text messages, and the reply back was, what are you telling me? And well, that's not what I meant. And then you call them, and it goes into voicemail. So, in any event,
You're trying to clarify, and
it goes back to what my mom taught us. I mean, if you got an issue with someone, just call them out, sit down, and talk about it.
yeah, I think it's good advice. Good advice from Mom.
I will say this about ways to communicate. COVID had a devastating impact on our business because we primarily represent tenants. And I get asked all the time, what are companies doing as far as going back to work and what have you. This morning we had a Teams call with a prospective client. And it's hard to build trust and a long-term relationship with someone over a screen. And I asked if we could, have a face-to-face meeting after the fact, and they agreed to do that. And that's where I think I'll be able to make more of an impact and differentiate yourself. But Teams and Zoom calls are incredibly effective with those you already have a relationship with. So we have some clients that we do business with all over the country. We either have weekly or biweekly or monthly calls with them.
Mm-hmm.
And I can do it from home. I can do it in my office. And I think one of the positives out of COVID, even though we had that technology, and you're in the technology industry,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not, is it was kind of like steroids for your industry.
Yeah, it was an injection of energy, and it catapulted that technology. That technology would have continued to proliferate over time. It just fast forwarded it 5 years.
Couldn't agree more. But to develop a new relationship, there's some handicaps to it. So a lot of our clients now are, really depends on the industry. We represent a number of different clients. Law, accounting, insurance, many high-end office users, and we had to pivot. So we do a lot of manufacturing, warehousing. We've got a number of industrial clients that have locations throughout the country. But I think what's happening with COVID, we're coming out of it now. So immediately, in the middle of COVID, many of my clients would say, we just don't know what to do. We're not going to the office. We've hit the pause button. So we would approach a landlord and ask for a 1-year extension. Now, most landlords will tell you they're not interested in a 1-year extension. There's holdover provisions in a lease to force a tenant to make a decision. But during that time frame, they were very amenable to doing a 1-year extension or a short-term extension so that our clients could figure out their business plan. Many of our clients have downsized or right-sized.
When you say downsized or right-sized, do you mean in terms of staff, or do you mean in terms of square footage of commercial?
Both. But what they're doing now, we got clients that had 80,000 square feet. They now have 12, depending on the industry. But what they're doing is they're signing long-term leases. They're now signing minimum 5, more often 10, sometimes 15-year leases, which is good for everyone. Because they can now see the forest through the tunnel. Many of our clients have sent out surveys, again, depending on the industry, but Clark Hill in particular, which is one of our portfolio clients, a law firm, I think they're Michigan's largest law firm. They sent out a survey a couple years back asking, how many days a week are you going to be in the office? They sent it out to the attorneys, the paralegals, the associates, staff. And if you came back and said, I plan on being in the office 3 days or more a week, you got an office. If you came back and said, maybe 1 day a week, maybe 2, you didn't. So the whole idea of cohabitation space, collaboration space, the furniture vendors that are selling a different type of concept has really evolved. I know Clark Hill space looks vastly different now than it did in the past. Not a lot of private offices, maybe a handful, a lot of open collaboration space. So there's been a lot of changes, but I just don't hear about it as much as I used to, which is great. I mean, how has COVID affected your business, or has it?
Like you said, during COVID, we had the boom of we had kind of a paradoxical thing going on, right? We had customers who were contracting and customers who were growing, and so for us, it was kind of we were net up overall. The customers really needed a lot of help with the moving to remote and learning the remote skills, right, and making sure that things were secure when they were while they're remote. And so a lot of that has held over. So cybersecurity did better or started to grow during that time for everyone. But it certainly changed us during the time. I mean, it's kind of same things. A lot of Zoom meetings, a lot of Teams meetings, things of that nature. But more people needing support in just a different way. Where they had buildings where they maybe even had someone supporting the team. Our co-managed IT grew quite a bit during COVID, and what that is where we come alongside of the internal IT team. And what happened was because if you had 100 people in a building, that one person who's on site there can take care of a lot of those people. Now, when you have 100 people in 100 different buildings, meaning their homes,
it's a challenge.
It's a big challenge, and so. And then you're operating with 100 different infrastructures, right? 100 different Comcast modems at those places, and not all of them are Comcast. Some
Plus,
of them are,
plus you don't do residential.
Plus, we don't do residential, except in that case.
Right.
But yeah, so it was definitely a learning curve. But I mean, it was a net positive in terms of we grew during the time rather than contracted. So I know that I was thankful to not be in the restaurant business at that point in time. We were considered a essential service, so we didn't really have any of those handcuffs placed on us by the government, which was amazing. We had so many friends and customers that had those. So yeah, I'm glad it's over.
You were busy.
This episode of the BLTnT podcast is sponsored by Auxium, business IT and cybersecurity designed to outsmart chaos. Empowered by Juniper Networks. Automate your network with Juniper Networks and the Mist AI platform, the world's first AI-driven wired and wireless network.
So you have competition, like I have competition.
We do.
So how do you differentiate yourself?
Some of the structure by which we operate, the packages that we offer have a differentiation, but I think it always comes down to your people and your work ethic. And how do you follow through with what you say you're going to do? Our company got started because I was frustrated with the IT companies that were serving our company. So I come at it from the client side of things versus the IT guy side of things. So that has peppered itself into our culture long term. To say how can we be as client centric as possible at all times, and that's the plan. We also have just continued to invest and plow back into the company. So we started off, like for example, we've significantly grown our cybersecurity presence. We hired the former chief information security officer from Lear, so somebody from big business, being able to help people from businesses that size on down smaller. And that's a big investment. That's a big investment for a company like ours. There's a lot of companies like ours that are leveraging third parties and consultants and things like that, and we decided we're going to invest in-house in that because cybersecurity is at the core of what we're trying to deliver for our clients.
So do you guys do, like us, a lot of hunting, a lot of cold calling? You got salespeople calling on?
Yeah, we do a little bit less of the cold calling. It's more of account-based marketing. So there's people that we've identified that we are trying to do business with because we believe we're a good fit for. We know that we're not a good fit for everyone. That's not saying that I wouldn't employ the cold calling techniques if I had a little bit more bandwidth on the sales side. But ours is more targeted. We do events. We go to events where we know our prospective people are. We leverage relationships through folks like you. So not a whole lot of
Pounding the phones.
crazy, but also not a whole lot of crazy science or algorithms to it. It's good old fashioned, networking, who we know, making sure that we're built. Every client is referenceable. So building relationships with clients that are referenceable so that they want to bring us to their friends.
Yeah, and I know we have a couple mutual clients,
Mm-hmm.
and that's been beneficial. And yeah, I'm just interested because we're pounding the phones. We do all the above. I don't cold call anymore. I've been doing this long enough to know that, and LinkedIn is an important part of my protocol.
Mm-hmm.
And so if we have a call, like we had today with a certain gentleman, I already knew that he was connected with and friends with a few people. So that kind of, because you got to be able to differentiate yourself. People are going to be on a call or meet with you. You're a salesman. So their defense mechanisms are up.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know if it's through humor or mutual relationships or follow-up or all of the above, but you've got to be able to do, and I got some great stories of, because I tell my salespeople that business is everywhere. You just got to be able to have a nose for it and ask the question, what do you do for a living, that sort of thing. And
Mm-hmm.
I just always thought that everybody had that skill set, and I realized that many don't. They're just not comfortable asking questions and learning more.
Well, I think it's the skill set, but I also think it's that you also have to kind of earn your bones too, right? I don't know if you remember this, whatever the tipping point was for you, but I remember that right around the age of, 35 to 40, was when all of a sudden your own circle are people that are in your network that are people that are potential customers of yours. So the cold calling piece of your business kind of can die down a little bit because you have the relationships with people, like we have common friends who are in the insurance and benefits business. And we know that between all of us that we might know, we know some common people. That common person will say that they have a need in real estate. We would bring you on board, or they say they have a need in IT, and you'd say, hey, you should call Matt. But that doesn't really happen as much when you're in your 20s, and that's where that cold calling and that's where pounding the pavement and kind of earning your bones kind of comes up, I think.
Right. No, I
and it's
agree.
like it's in your sales style can change then, and just kind of where the business comes from can change at different points in your life.
So we got salespeople that make over 100 calls a day, and that's not an easy life, and trying to get someone on the phone, and then when you do get them on the phone, it's a quick call and that sort of thing. So I'm always telling them you got to be able to differentiate yourself and provide value. So if you get someone on the phone and they're in a certain building, tell them that we represented XYZ company in your building, or the building's going back to the lender, or whatever. Everybody wants to know what their competition's doing. So we represent a lot of law firms, and we call on a lot of law firms. Doesn't mean we get in the door. But I'm just thinking of one story where we pitched a client, and we had met with their COO 2 or 3 times, and now we're meeting the CFO.
Mm-hmm.
And they went from 8 different firms to 4. Now they were down to 2. And we were going up against one of our very aggressive competitors who has an entirely different style than I do. The gentleman that we were meeting with for the first time had an Italian last name, which really doesn't mean a whole lot. And you don't want to go down that path unless you're comfortable. But we're in fact, we're doing it this weekend, Matt. We jar tomato sauce. It's a family endeavor, so we have. I'll have to get you a jar.
That'd be great.
So we went to the meeting And you always try to anticipate what may or may not happen. So I brought 2 jars of sauce, big jars. So, and I had them in a bag, and I told now my managing director, Jim Berkmeyer, keep these in a bag. There's 90% chance I'm not going to pull them out. So the meeting went okay, and then we're getting ready to break up. And he said to me, he said, your last name is Munaco. Where are your people from? Well, I'm not even sure you could even ask that question anymore. But and I told him, he goes, we're from a different town, not too. So we started talking like family and upbringing, and I realized that his Italian culture was important to him. I said, so I wasn't sure how this was going to go, but we're pretty hardcore. We really try to keep the family traditions. We jar our own sauce, so I brought these for you. So I put 2 big jars on the table. He said, "Oh, 2 jars. This must be a big deal." I said, "Well, it's a big deal, but we've worked on bigger deals." He said, "So, but 2 jars, right? And that's a lot." I said, "Well, yeah, but," I said, "just so you know, because I believe in transparency, one is good and the other's got like rat poison in it." And he said, "I'm sorry, what did you say?" I said, "One's good and the other's, I put some rat poison in it." So he looked at me, he says, "You're out of your fucking mind, don't you?" I said, I've been told that." He said, "So how do I know what to do?" I said, "That's my point. Right now you don't know if you're going to stay or you're going to move out of Detroit and go to Southfield. We will help you navigate the path." Because you're out of your mind. So so we left, and I looked at my team. I said, I think we differentiated ourselves. I'm not sure if it worked well. So a couple of days later, he called me. He says, we decided it was a really close battle, and I was waiting for the but, and we decided to hire you. I said, "Oh, wow, that's terrific. We're really excited." I said, "Can I ask why?" He goes, "Sure." I said, "It was the sauce, right? The tomato sauce?" He goes, "No." I said, "Come on, that didn't sway you?" He goes, "Not at all." He said, "So what I did, and I've never heard anyone do this before." He says, "When we went from 4 to 2, I called number 3 and I called number 4 to tell them that they weren't getting the business.
They're out.
And it took them a long time to understand that they were out. And I asked them, of the 2, who would you hire?" And they both said, Advocate Advisors and Sam Munaco. I said, "Wow. And why was that?" He said, "Well, they had a number of reasons. Said you're transparent, you work hard, you're a good communicator, and you're one of the few in your industry that when you lose, nobody does this in my business. When you lose and it's a fair fight, you call and you congratulate them." And they remember that. That's why I'm hiring you, not because of the sauce.
Wow.
He says, "And by the way, which one's good, which one's bad?" I said, they're both good.
Good.
So
So do you think you threw those out and just in case, or you think you actually ate them?
no, because he's on the annual gift giving program. So this is someone who's now retired, and I keep in contact with him. I make we're talking about differentiating yourself. That may or may not be a good example, but at a very early age, before Microsoft Outlook and calendars on your phone, I had index cards. I make over 300 birthday calls a year. And it's easy to text someone, I call them. And I got friends from kindergarten and grade school. Call them on their birthday, and they say, I'm expecting the call, Sam. When is your birthday? And I said, it doesn't matter. And I hang up because I hate when people call me on my birthday. But I do this with clients. It's just a good way to stay relevant, stay in touch. Because when we sign a deal with a client, it's a 5 or a 10-year deal. There really isn't much for us to do. So what happens during that time frame is young pups like I was, they start calling on them. And people retire, people go to different jobs. So I want to stay relevant. I want to stay in their face so that when that lease comes up for renewal, it's seamless.
Yep.
At least that's what I try to do.
Somebody told me one of the best rules in life is and maybe life and in business, you can take it in both, is to provide value in excess of what the person has paid you for. Now, so you could use that as a customer, and so that customer, you got a commission for that lease. You're putting work into them in excess of the job that you were paid for in some ways. Now, maybe that's just through personal relationships or whatnot, but every relationship that I go into, and every lunch or meeting, whatever you want to say, I always go into it thinking, who could I introduce this person to? Who would it be valuable for that person to know? Because it's always worked out in my world that the Zig Ziglar, right? You can help enough. If you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want, or something along those lines. But if you provide value first and don't expect anything to come from it, good things happen every single time. And maybe not every single time, but in the law of averages, good things always happen.
That's a powerful connection where you can bring someone value or make an introduction. I try to do that. I like connecting people. I know you're a connector.
But it might be just sauce, right? I mean, sometimes it's just giving them sauce or saying happy birthday or whatever it is. But what's the value? And maybe you have other stories of providing value in excess of what the person has paid you for. Do you have an example of that?
I got all kinds of examples, but it's maybe I'm getting off topic, but our three uniques that really differentiate our company is we represent tenants only and we're conflict free. Okay, great, but there are other companies that do that. Mm-hmm. Second unique is what you see is what you get. We're a small enough company. We're not a CBRE or a JLL where you're gonna get hired on an account and then pass it off to a junior associate. We work on the deals. Mm-hmm. We're involved. And then our third unique is our compensation model, which is really different because we get hired by the tenant, but we get paid by the landlord, which is a conflict. And many of our clients don't know what we're getting paid. Now, some of them don't care because if they get a terrific deal, but we disclose, in the spirit of being transparent, we disclose what our fee is to our client, even though they're not paying. They're paying it indirectly in the rental rate. And if we weren't providing value, we would be out of business. So we disclose to our tenant what our fee is. This is something that Roger Staubach did. Remember Roger Staubach, the quarterback for the Dallas Cowboys? Yes. He was the inventor.
I'm not a big sports guy, so I don't remember everything. But
I'm leaving.
I know a couple of sports people.
So I'm sure you do. So Roger Staubach, who went to Navy, Heisman Trophy winner, Dallas Cowboy quarterback, Hall of Famer, started the tenant rep model. So, and this is a concept that we have also implemented. So we disclose to our client what our fee is.
Okay.
And 100% of that fee is at their discretion. So if we drop the ball, we underperform, we don't do all the things that we said we were going to do, if they're chasing us, if we're not communicating with them, they can take up to 100% of our fee. Now, they got to be reasonable. Mm-hmm. There's some, they can't say, I don't like the tie that you're wearing. And I have learned so when I got pitched by my CEO, Craig Bram, to leave where I was at and go run Advocate, and he explained this concept to us, I thought, he's out of his mind. Mm-hmm. My clients, they don't care. I don't want to disclose to them what our fee is. And when you buy life insurance, you know what the fee is that the agent's making?
No, not exactly.
Well, you should know. Mm-hmm. So we disclose it, and what I have found out is two things. 98% of the time, our clients really aren't interested in our fee. We have some mutual clients, they don't ask. Mm-hmm. And those that drill upon what's the fee, how's this going to work, they're not a good fit for us. If they don't want to provide, if they're so worried about what the fee is, then there's usually a correlation that they don't have a good work environment for their, So when we're being interviewed and vetted, I'm also vetting the client very carefully. We got hired by a very large law firm recently. I don't want to disclose their name, but they don't really care about their office environment. And if they don't care about their employees, then they're not someone that we want to do business with.
Mm-hmm.
And I also learned years ago from a very dear friend of mine by the name of Tony Ferlito. I don't know if you know Tony Ferlito.
Builder?
The builder. And like all of us, we've had our ups and downs, especially in that industry. And he said, Sam, I'm to the point in my career now that I only want to deal with people that have a heart.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have a heart, and if you don't care about others, I'm not doing business with you. And I said, Tony, well, how do you know that? He said, Sam, you can tell. If you have a heart, you got a heart, I got a heart, you can tell.
Mm-hmm.
So I only want to work, one of the reasons why I'm here today, Matt, is because you have a heart.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't have to come to my house. And by the way, you still got to come back out again.
I send more qualified people now.
No, I'm joking. You've done a terrific job. It's the little things, the little details that are important. Another story, we pitched a very large architectural firm. They've interviewed a number of companies. I won't mention who they are, but it's down to 2.
Mm-hmm.
And the competition that we're up against is a very formidable competitor. I can usually, if it's CBRE or JLL, I can conflict them out because they represent landlords. This other particular firm does very much the same kind of work that we do. And so I met with the CFO. He mentioned a local restaurant, Italian restaurant, that he likes to go to in Sterling Heights. I asked if he'd like to dine there some night. He goes, no, next week is out. I'm traveling. And by the way, I'm going there tonight. Well, it's a restaurant called Da Francesco.
Mm-hmm.
Been there. And
Oh, yeah.
yeah. So Dominic's a dear friend of ours, and one of my brothers, and I really thought long and hard about it. I'm going to buy this guy dinner. That could backfire.
Sure.
So I called one of my partners who's part of it, and I said, what do you think? He says, well, I think 2 things, Sam. Number one, you're going to do it regardless of what I tell you to do. And I think it'll be a nice touch. And if we don't get hired because you bought him dinner, then he's not a good fit for us.
Correct.
So I did. And the waitress was instructed, if and when he asked who bought dinner, she was to say, and she did, no comment. So he texted me after, or no, her response was, none of your business. So he texted me after. He says, I went to Da Francesco. I had dinner, and there was no bill. Do you know anything about that? And I replied, no comment.
Yeah.
And it really took the relationship to the next level because he said, the devil's in the details. I said, we look out for our clients. We really want to get hired by you and work on this. And if we don't, that's okay too. So this is a guy that I've had a number of Teams calls with, never met personally. And I did ask, I said, I'm frustrated because I'm not good on these calls.
Mm-hmm.
So we had lunch this past Monday,
Mm-hmm.
and I think we got a very good chance of getting hired. And if we don't, then I can sleep at night knowing that we've done everything
Sure.
possible. Now that's backfired, where I got automotive clients where I buy them a case of wine, and they're like, "Dude, I can't do this," or
Yeah.
send them concert tickets.
Right.
You can't. So you got to know your audience, but you got to differentiate yourself, and sometimes you just got to take a chance.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Sam, there's one thing I wanted to talk to you about was, you do all this networking, you do all this, you're out and about, right? You're in the community all the time. That's hard, right? That gets tiring. I always have the commitment of I'm trying to be home for every game. I'm trying to be home for every, putting the kids to bed every night if at all possible. So that's my goal. But I'm out there too, and I've learned that I have to say yes to a lot of things, and but it's a delicate balance. So can you talk about saying yes to things? Who do you listen to for that? How do you decide? Because it's almost infinite, right? Like you invited me to an event up in Traverse City, right?
I did.
That we went to, and so we kind of took a little beeline. We were in the region, but
It was a waste of time, wasn't it?
it was a little. I mean, it wasn't a waste of time because we got to hang out with you and your wife.
And
so
you met Tom Tom Aganello?
Yeah, met Tom, got to see Kurt, got to see some people that I hadn't seen in a while. So no, I mean, none of it's truly nothing is truly ever a waste of time, but it's a balance, right? You got any advice or stories on saying yes or saying no, going to things, not going to things?
Well, as I get older, I'm saying no more and more often to not only events but business opportunities, because we're laser focused on what we do. I mentioned earlier we don't represent landlords, we don't do retail, we don't do any medical. So many times I have to say no and not chase that shiny new fish. But saying yes, I mean, it can be exhausting going to so many different networking events and trade shows, and it's hard to say no to my wife. I do have an example that really did pan out for us. My daughter was graduating, this is 2012, from Notre Dame Prep High School. One of her classmates lived down the street. I really liked him. But it was a Sunday, and my wife and I have like a 24-hour rule. If she doesn't, so like literally 10 minutes before, we have to go to this graduate. I'm not going. It's
because she didn't tell you 24 hours in advance.
Part of it.
Okay.
I didn't, the Lions were on, and in 2012, who knows? I mean, it was probably a good reason to get out of the house.
But point is, you didn't really want to go.
I had no intention of going, so I begrudgingly went. She said, just go for 15 minutes. And I went because I liked the young man. He used to play golf I'd give him golf passes to play at Devil's Ridge out in Oxford. So I went, I said hi, and since we walked there, I was getting ready to leave, and my wife said, you didn't even meet the father. So I didn't. She said, well, at least go say hello to him. So I introduced myself. Hi, I'm Sam. I'm Mike. I said, you got a very nice son, very respectful. And, I try to teach my salespeople, always ask the question, what do you do for a living? And I did. He said, I work at this Tier 1 automotive supplier by the name of Cooper Standard. Oh, what do you do there? He says, well, I head up their mergers and acquisitions. So I literally turned my back on him, and I knew we had a couple meetings with the gentleman there. And I came back, I said, do you know a guy by the name of David Hocker? He says, David reports to me. How do you know him? I said, well, we met with him, we made a presentation. How's it going, Sam? I said, I think we're one of many. I haven't talked to him in a few months. He's not, you don't want to say anything negative about someone. I said, but, it's just, I think we're one of many. And it really hasn't gotten to the next level. First thing Monday morning, my phone rings. Hey, Sam, it's David. How you doing? Fast forward, we got hired, and we wound up doing a build-a-suit with Showstack out in Northville, and it was one of the largest transactions we ever worked on.
Wow. And
it was just asking the question, being, at an event that I didn't want to go, and do my homework. I mean, I with my phone, I the contact wasn't readily available, and a lot of it is just a bunch of dumb luck too.
Yeah. But you got to show up, right? I mean, that wasn't going to happen on your couch watching the Lions. So.
No, I think I had a 2-leg parlay on that game or something. So in any event, it was. So I have a lot of stories like that, and again, I think what's most important. A dear friend of mine has, who's in sales, he owns an insurance company, has said, you got to fish where the fish are at. So early in my career, I joined the Detroit Athletic Club, and that's been a wonderful place to meet people and network. And you're not supposed to go in there and solicit business and use the directory as your cold call list. But, two of the bigger deals I ever met, that I ever worked on, were gentlemen that I met in the steam room.
Wow.
Just striking up a conversation. One of them said, I'm really intrigued with your business model and what you do for a living. Why don't you give me a call on Monday? And I said, I've been calling on you for 7 years. Never been able to get in the door. He said, "Well, call me on Monday."
Wow.
So it's been a fun run. It's still, chasing and networking and connecting the dots. And I did touch on LinkedIn earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I got some great clients, great relationships, but many of them are retiring now. So now I got to get down. I got to get to the next generation of who's taking over, and that's why it's great to have so many younger people part of our team because they can connect with them now.
Sure.
At least that's the plan.
That's great.
That's the
Well, I know
plan.
you always have the inside line on what's going on. What can you tell us here right as we're wrapping up? It's almost Miller time, and there's a lot going on in Detroit. The RenCen is a big conversation piece right now of what's going to happen to it. What do you think you can share without ending up in the concrete, in the foundation of whatever the next building is?
No comment. So what can I tell you? I know what everybody else knows. There's been a lot of articles, a lot of speculation, and I think in the next 3 to 6 months, your question will be answered. What's going to happen to the RenCen? I know the mayor is adamant that he does not want to see these towers torn down. They're iconic.
Mm-hmm.
Even watching Sunday Night Football the other day, what do you see most of? You see the skyline of the Renaissance Center. What I think might happen and what will happen could be two different things, and I'm in the thick of things that I'm not at liberty to discuss right now. But what I think might happen is two of the towers might come down. There's been talk, and it's been in the paper, because General Motors for sure is vacating. We know that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 2.2 million square feet. That there's only just a handful of tenants in there. So I think two towers are going to come down, but most of it is going to be predicated. Cranes wrote an article a couple of days ago on about $300 million that the state of Michigan has earmarked for something,
Okay.
but hasn't identified what exactly that is. I'm under the belief and contention that that's for the Renaissance Center. If that happens, then things are in play that I'm privy to. Otherwise, and it's interesting, GM, again, this is all public record, has signed a lease to move. Bedrock has an option to purchase, and GM is responsible for the demolition costs if and when that happens. So I'm working with a potential user that may be interested in moving over there, and I'm trying to figure out who's going to be on the other side of the table. Is it going to be GM? Is it going to be Bedrock, or both? And I'm not sure I have an answer yet, but I got to believe that Bedrock's going to have some involvement. And what people don't realize, as important as the Renaissance Center is, and it is important, it's just part of a much bigger plan that Dan Gilbert has.
Mm-hmm.
The Detroit riverfront is an underutilized asset that he controls or has options on just about all of that property.
Mm-hmm.
So it involves more than the RenCen and Hart Plaza and the Ford Auditorium and all the wonderful work that the Detroit Conservancy has done that now connects us all the way to Stroh River Place. So it's important to Dan, and if it's important to him, it's going to get done, and it's going to get done properly. But boy, I sure hate to see those towers go down.
Yeah.
And again, I think two of them may.
Well, time will tell here. It sounds like in short order we're going to know what's going on.
I'm not quite sure to your. You don't tell another Italian about putting him in concrete. I
just said, if you talk too much. I mean, we learned in Goodfellas. What are the two rules? Never say nothing and don't rat on your friends.
Don't rat on your friends. Yeah. So this is fun, Matt. I enjoyed this, and I hope it wasn't a waste of your time.
I think it was a good use of my time. So thanks for being here.
Do I get paid for this?
You do not. But you get the notoriety of your friends and anybody else who watches this.
Maybe I'll have someone come out to my house and help me with my Wi-Fi.
That could be a fringe benefit of this.
Always a pleasure to see you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sam Munaco, BLTnT podcast. Thanks for being here.
Good to be here.
So long.